Oh, I don't think we want to start that yet.
We'll just mute and wait until the top of the hour.
For your hospital's infrastructure, ensuring a smooth, efficient budget cycle. So whether you're new to capital planning or looking to redefine your approach, this webinar will provide you with some practical tools and insight to help you create a robust capital plan that not only meets the needs of your facility, but also garners the support and approval of your organization or organization's decision makers. So, the agenda, I'll go through a few introductions here. And as I said, that's me, Will Walburn with Soleran. But we're going to start off here with Travis Burt, who's got the best beard in the business. Travis has had the privilege of serving Carson Tahoe Health for 18 years. He has not only built a career, but also cultivated a deep commitment to ensuring the healthcare environment remains safe, efficient, and reliable. His journey at Carson Tahoe Health began as a maintenance tech, a role that allowed him to develop a strong foundation in the technical and mechanical aspects of healthcare facility management. In addition, his hands-on experience in maintenance, he also took on the role of IT application analyst. In this role, he was able to bridge the gap between technology and facility management, ensuring systems are not only operational, but also optimized for efficiency. His work in IT has given him a unique perspective on how technology can be leveraged to improve maintenance operations, streamline workflows, and enhance the overall functionality of our healthcare facilities. He's going to give us kind of the day in the life of how he's currently getting his manual capital planning process together, plus some common issues his facility has encountered. So followed up by him is going to be our very own Amanda Havlin, who's one of the nicest people in the business. Amanda is the Director of Program Management at Soleran. She has nearly 8 years of experience in the role. She specializes in developing and implementing innovative procedures and hospital client-specific strategies, overseeing intricate software implementation plans, and managing multiple client-facing projects. She has been instrumental in developing Soleran software alongside many hospital facility directors and managers that she interacts with on a daily basis. She excels in fostering long-term client relationships and is instrumental in product expansion and customization. Amanda's expertise also extends to integrating new technologies and best practices, resolving unique regulatory hospital-related problems, and applying strategic big picture thinking to everyday tasks for the numerous hospitals and systems on Soleran software. So she'll go through the automated process of capital planning, and let's see which one you guys like better. So those are your introductions for today. So I'm excited to kick things off, and we're going to turn things over to Travis Burt.
Thank you, Will. Thanks for the introduction. Appreciate it. So like you said, I've been at the hospital here 18 years, had a handful of roles. It wasn't about 10 years ago I started actually getting involved in submitting capital projects and dealing with that that whole animal. So my experience at the beginning was pretty rough. As an analyst for IT, I would submit lots of projects, work with managers in different departments, and primarily I was access control and like security infrastructure analyst. And so I would get a lot of feedback from departments of things that they wanted to improve. I'd put those together into projects, and then come capital submission season, I would submit them all up our chain of command, and a lot of times, most often, they would get denied. I didn't really have a good explanation for why. It just seemed like they didn't want to do, the organization didn't want to do these things. It was kind of frustrating. I worked with some of my peers, and I was able to better understand, what leadership, like the C-suite executive team, was looking for in a project. And I didn't understand that there was a long-term goal for the organization, and I was a little bit ahead of the game sometimes. So they were just not approving my projects, not because they didn't want to make these improvements, but more like they didn't have the, it wasn't in their 5-year, 10-year plan at that moment. So just understanding some of that helped me improve my rationale to leadership. Next slide, please. So some of the things that have challenged me, clarifying capital versus operating. So understanding the difference between capital investment or operational expenses would be very nice to be able to understand that difference. A lot of times our techs, they don't need to really understand those differences. I just want them to bring issues forward. Their daily work and documenting their work orders, that should be adequate to give a picture of everything that we would need to put together for a capital project. Additionally, having a clear view of our organization's strategic goals and objectives each year would help us put better projects together and have our projects be requests be more effective. By knowing the broader priorities, we can ensure our submissions support our organization's overall goals. Next slide, please. So enhancing transparency. At times, our current process just feels like it's happening, I don't know, behind a curtain. The executive team I know that they have their spreadsheets and everything that they're working on, projects that are year over year. But a lot of times we don't see that at our level. And being able to have a more transparent process, I think, would help everybody feel like they're more part of the actual improvement for the organization. Using system data to justify our capital expense. What I mean by that is when our staff go out and they do maintenance, we see documented issues over time. And right now we're having to manually extract that or use our technicians' feelings to understand if there's a need for improvement. But by utilizing the data that we gather from our corrective work orders and our preventative maintenance, being able to show that to our leadership team and have a data-driven approach would help streamline approval and more likely to have our projects approved at the end of the day. Next slide, please. Aligning our capital requests with strategy. And to improve the effectiveness of our budget requests, it's crucial to clearly demonstrate how our requests align with our organization's strategic goals. When this link is not clear, our requests are likely to be deprioritized or just rejected outright. A greater focus on aligning our capital projects with strategic priorities will ensure that we're all working towards the same goal, which is ultimately, improving our organization. A lot of times I see multiple departments, they have a similar need, but they all have a different avenue for solving their problem. Being able to reduce or get rid of the redundancies and focus our projects into one department, they go with this company, we go with another company, but ultimately we need the same thing. And so being able to communicate between departments and have one common goal would, just reduce our overhead, less cost, and we'd save money in the long run. Next slide, please. Challenges, reaching an agreement. We understand that, reaching a consensus on which projects to fund is a challenge, especially when there isn't really a clear understanding of which initiatives are most critical to the organization. This lack of clarity can slow down the approval process and creates frustration amongst the folks that are submitting the projects, or that actually, are the ones needing that project for their daily activities. A need for clear objectives. Clear, well-defined objectives would help us better align our capital budget requests with the organization's priorities, and a more structured process could facilitate consensus building and, streamline the approval process, and it benefits everybody all being on the same page. Next slide, please. Increasing efficiency. By providing all of our staff with a clearer understanding of our goals, we can improve our efficiency for our capital budget submission. So right now, beginning of the year, we always talk about it, start bringing stuff forward, everybody. And then by capital season, it's a scramble. We're trying to get quotes together. We're trying to put everything together. I think having something year over year, we could see, we worked on this project last year. It didn't get approved. This is a goal for the organization for 2 years from now. Well, that gives us some time to put together the whole structure of the project, and all you're left with at the end is a quote. For budgetary, much more simple. Always feels like we're scrambling at the last minute to get everything done. And then the next year, you forget the heartaches that you had the previous year. And enhancing staff buy-in and morale. I know personally, submitting projects over time, getting denied is pretty disheartening. I want to improve stuff, and I always felt like, my voice wasn't heard. But a lot of that is just being able to effectively communicate to upper management. I was only presenting technical data and basically a cost, with no real explanation as to how that cost was going to benefit our organization long term. So when staff see that their needs are met through a nice, transparent, and understandable process, they're much more likely to feel valued and engaged. Open communication channels will build a culture of trust, which can significantly improve morale and investment in our mission. So, that's pretty much all I have. I know I'm really excited to, work with Soleran and see just what, data and like a central hub for all of our work, where you can use that data and present our goals and our achievements or whatever, so we can have a better capital planning season, I guess. And then that's all I got, really. I appreciate the time.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Travis. Really appreciate it. Really wish we had webcams so everybody could see your beautiful beard. That's beard at the business, but they can just see your picture. All right. Well, our next presenter, I'm gonna switch over here. You may see a little white flicker. I'm gonna switch over and give Amanda so she can take over and give her part of the presentation on how to do this in a much more faster, convenient way. All you, Amanda.
Great. Thanks, Will. I will do, as Will said, walk you kind of through a demonstration of the features and functions we have for capital planning in Soleran's tool. So what we are going to start with is all that great data that Travis was mentioning, kind of how it's stored in the system, and how we can use that data for justification in building that capital planning budget. So hopefully it won't be such a rush season either. It's something that you can do more slowly over time if you so choose. So I'm going to show you how our system kind of uses all of that information you're collecting just on a regular basis, so that it's hopefully less of a lift when it comes to building those budgets. So we are looking at an asset record in our application at the moment, and we're going to highlight some of those data points that we can use in building that budget. So we have an air conditioner here that we're taking a look at in our downtown building. And I'm going to skip over a few things. We have some specifications for it and kind of zero in on what we call the asset's health here. We'll start with some general assessments about the asset, one of which is understanding the asset's risk. We're kind of using a standard NFPA 1, 2, 3, 4 for the risks in this scenario, but it's also something that can be adjusted by each organization. If you're doing regular condition assessments, either internally or through a vendor, you can kind of assess that condition of the asset. But so far, we're building some good data points that we can use in justification when it comes around to a desire to replace a particular asset. We can also get some details around the asset's health. So you'll see we have a couple of dials here. Comprehensive asset health is going to be a combination of the other two, which we call our corrective health. So things you're doing corrective maintenance or repairs on, and then preventative maintenance, any of that proactive work that you're doing as well. So we're going to track some metrics, again, automatically by just doing your normal work order or CMMS system, the number of work orders we've had over this asset's history over the past couple of years, the time our technicians have spent doing corrective or preventative work orders over the past few years, as well as costs, if you're tracking parts cost. So we can see here some trends on this particular air conditioner, right? Things have been getting a little bit worse in 2024. We're spending more time and more money maintaining this particular asset, which is why we're going to see kind of some lower scores as far as our asset health. So we're trying to get this good information out there based on the data that you have to give you an indication of how well that asset is performing. That's certainly not the only factors to consider, right? Money always plays a part. So there are costs that you can track associated with the asset as well. So we're going to kind of zero in temporarily at the bottom right-hand corner here. So we have replacement costs, and we're trying to get detailed on those replacement costs. Not only what does it take to buy that new air conditioner that's going to replace this one, but what does it take to install? What are our contingencies or other miscellaneous costs, so that we have a true idea of what that total replacement cost is for that asset. So Soleran can help you with this replacement cost. We have some general asset-based costs that can kind of give you a foundation as you're planning. As Travis mentioned, when it comes to actually wanting to replace that, could be a time to go get that quote, maybe update this to the more specific detailed numbers for the model in particular you have in mind to replace this. So we'll come back to that a little bit, but we can really try to be detailed and specific on those costs to give those executives a really good detail on the cost to actually replace this. There are a couple other factors on this page too that I certainly like to consider. So our installation date and expected life can really give us this replacement date too, so that we can consider replacing assets based on how long we expected their life to be once we installed them. So that can keep and help us justify some things as well if something is past its replacement date. Soleran also provides what we call an asset replacement viability rating. So this is a formula that's taking into account all of our labor and parts costs and comparing it to our total replacement costs. As the cost to maintain it get higher in comparison to our replacement costs, it'll give the recommendation that we take it for higher and higher consideration for replacement. So these are just more tools, in your tool belt for considering assets to be replaced. One more factor I like to point out is tracking assets warranty. Maybe not all of them are going to have warranty, but knowing that you are paying for a warranty might factor into your decision as well. Potentially, if it's past its warranty expiration, is that going to factor in to your decision to either renew a warranty or replace an asset? Those are some additional factors that you can track in the database and take into account for that budget. So a lot of this is just pulling from information you're doing on a regular basis, as I mentioned, such as work orders. So we're going to take a quick peek at a work order here. So I'm going to go to one that we have for this particular air conditioner. We did a PM a little ways back and determined that we needed to replace a belt for it. So one of the things that our team did was it spent some labor hours, if we look over here in our total time, actually replacing that belt. And I also spent some money, right, on the new belt itself. So those are things that your technicians are typically capturing on a regular basis, just doing their day-to-day work. If you're not capturing parts costs, you're probably at least capturing labor time. So, even if you're not going to collect all of this information, the more you do collect, the more you can work with, but even just labor is something that you can consider in your efforts to build a budget. All right. Well, let's dive into actually building a budget, knowing what materials that we have to work with. So I'm going to go to a new tab here, and we're going to take a look at what we call our budgets module. So with our budgets module, hopefully you notice that we have several budgets going at once. So this can help you plan for multiple years in advance, right? Travis was mentioning how it's really great to get kind of ahead of the game, and that maybe executives and management are really trying to plan further and further into the future. You can be maintaining as many budgets in the system as you need. Now, that might be some time-based budgets, as we see here, we got 2024, 2025, 2026, but it can also be things like 2 different versions of your budget. So we have another client who likes to put together their dream budget versus their realistic budget, right? The dream budget's what they're really hoping for, but the realistic ones may be based more on what they expect to get from a financing perspective. So you can have different budgets for that, or perhaps by different location. If you have multiple campuses, maybe you're just making a budget for one campus versus another. There's really no limit. However you want to define the budget that you're creating, you can do so. But the power is that you can have multiple budgets created, and a single asset can qualify for as many budgets as you'd like, right? So especially if you're doing that dream budget versus realistic budget, you can have an asset considered for both and be able to present those reports accordingly. So we've really only talked about like the naming kind of conventions or considerations for a budget, but let's take a look at how we actually build one. So I'm going to go into one we've already started here for our Missouri campus for the year of 2025. So for this example in particular, we're going to do campus or location specific and in a particular year. So you can also put in the budget total that you're kind of asking for here, and the system will then calculate the replacement total cost based on the assets you're considering and kindly let you know that you have some more money to spend, or if you spent too much money in comparison to that budget total. So it'll help kind of keep you on track. So the good news is, if you've noticed, we've still got some money to spend here. So we'll talk through adding some assets to our budget. I've got a few listed down here below, but we have a tool we call our budget builder. By clicking our add assets to get to the budget builder, where we can start narrowing them down. So this is where it might help to be able to do some budget building on a reoccurring basis, if you so choose, rather than maybe waiting to, budgeting or capital planning season. If you want to wait till capital planning season, sounds like an interesting time, you can do that as well. But we can start to consider our assets as a whole and kind of filtering them down to what we feel like are the ones that are truly necessary. So this is that filtering process that we're talking about. So we mentioned that we were just looking for one particular location. So I've chosen some filters here to help us narrow down our results. Maybe we've kind of already started to consider things that were replacement required, but maybe I want to also say, since we have so much money remaining, lucky us, that we want to consider things that are in fair as well as good condition. Because, right, we're trying to spend some more money here, which I know isn't always the case, but we're going to do it. We can also consider risk. So maybe I want to consider all assets regardless of risk. So I can add all of the risk options that I want to factor in, as few or as many as you'd like. We can also consider that replacement date. So these were just some of the examples that we talked at on the asset. So maybe we've been, pushing it for a while. We'll even maybe look back a few years, right? Replacement dates, some things have long past when we hope to replace them, but we also want to see what we can maybe get through the end of this year, right? See what all we have necessary to replace. So it'll give us the option to build a filter set, and you can build as many of these as you want. So if I want to come back and consider other condition assessments or other campuses, I can do that. It'll give me the option to add assets to my budget builder. So it'll show me what those assets are based on my filter, and I can choose to add those assets to my budget. So this is kind of that filtering process I was talking about. So we've considered these assets now based on our conditions above, and then we can kind of review them before we decide to proceed with adding them to our budget. And you can go through this process as many times as possible, and then you can even change your mind and remove them from your budget. But we're trying to make it a kind of a phased approach so that it makes it easier to do as far as you're building it. So we've got a little report here. We can look at the assets and take into account their condition, risk, replacement date, replacement cost. If there are other factors you're interested in considering, right, before you decide to add them to the budget, we can add other columns or other information on the report. But then you can just select which ones you want. You might select all of them, or I might say, this would be a little bit ambitious. Maybe I'll remove a couple that are listed as good and just focus on the ones that are fair after all. And then you can actually go and add those assets to your budget. So I want to add them to my Missouri 2025 budget. It's going to confirm that it's going to do that. And then I can go and view it. So again, we can go up and say, we want to go consider other condition assessments, other risks, other replacement dates, and go through that process as many times as we want to start building this budget. So if we go back to our budget here, we can see we spent a little bit more money. We added a few more assets to our budget, and you can always change your mind on some things too. If you want to remove one, you can check that box or multiple boxes and choose to remove those assets. But our goal with this phase then is to probably go and get those quotes. At least that's our recommendation. You've started to identify some assets that you really want to consider. So even though we've got a replacement cost over here, maybe it's just an average, or maybe it's something that you haven't updated in a while. This might be the time to go and consider whether you want that asset to be part of the budget and if its information is up to date. So you can go in and click on an asset ID here to see more information. So any of these are listed here that are going to be hyperlinked. So I can go to that asset and I can see more information about it. At which point I might go to my cost tab and choose to update my replacement cost based on a new quote for the new model that I'd like. So you can update that information there as well. So that's helping us narrow it down, and then we can do add assets by that, Travis, I like kind of the way you said it, like by feeling, right? A lot of times that filtering is a really good process to start from nothing. But if you just know you have a feeling about an asset that you want to add, you can go and search your assets and add any asset individually to a budget that you so choose. So if I just go to my full asset list here and I want to search for one, let's see if we've got an asset 1,000 here. Oops, that's 10,000, but here we go. We'll just add the first one in the list instead. That'll be our go-to. We can go and edit this particular asset, and I can add it to as many budgets as I want. So if we go to our cost tab, we can see what budgets it's a part of. So if I want to add it to my Missouri 2025 budget, I can, or any other budgets that exist. So you can kind of add them individually too. Just depends on your process and kind of how you're identifying them. So when feelings need to come into play, I think that would be a great way to go to address those items from there. So our budget's getting really close to kind of what we want, and we can start to use the reports and data to justify it. We've got a section here for just general justifications if you want to describe kind of the goal behind these and the decision behind some of these, and then our reports are going to help you with the data behind them. So we've got some visuals here. The first kind of section that we're going to look at is about the budget and the cost. So we can see how much we have remaining of our budget versus how much we've spent. And then we can see some breakdowns by cost, right? Cost by condition, cost by asset risk, assets by category. And we also have counts. So I love the cost, but volume also matters. So we can see things by the number of assets by risk, by category, to kind of see the quantity side of things from the report section. So that's going to help with the visual component of justifying your budget. But finally, we want to be able to share this with those executives or management, as Travis mentioned, so that we can make our point, make our case for the items that we want. So there's going to be the option to print this budget, and that can either be to a PDF or to paper, whichever is going to make sense for your organization. But we can generate that, and we can regenerate it at any point that we need to if we're making adjustments to our budget. So I think I had one ready to go here. So this we can print, and it's going to summarize our budget information, give our visual breakdown of how we are electing to kind of spend some of that budget, and then detailed information on each asset. So as you're going through and justifying or explaining why you need to replace this particular, it looks like an air handler, we can see its risk. We can see that its condition says it needs to be replaced. We have a breakdown of those costs and knowing that it was installed quite a while ago. So this is helping you justify all of that costs that you are, or that budget that you are asking for. So to give a detailed breakdown of all of those assets that are going to be, sorry, let me scan a little bit more down for you. I think it's not showing my popover like I hoped. There we go. You can print it to a PDF, but here's that asset breakdown. So that'll be a big part of getting it justified. You can always mark at the end that this budget is complete if everything has been approved. Again, make multiple versions of it to really meet all of your kind of planning needs. There's one other component that I like that comes along with the system here, which would be we have a dashboard that is our kind of asset replacement planner. So it'll help you slowly over time, right? Or anytime you want, maybe not slowly over time, anytime you want, consider assets by their conditions and maybe adding them as you see them pop up with lower and lower condition assessments, or if you're seeing their costs start to go up. You can track some of those budgets overall and then their expenses. So this asset replacement planner gives you a lot of reports about your assets that are, obviously changing over time so that you can kind of see some things coming as far as what you might want to do in your budget. So that's our goal, to just give you the opportunity to be doing some of this capital planning throughout the year, if you so choose, to be ahead of the game and add assets as situations allow. So hopefully it's a little less of a scramble when the time comes to justify that budget for those assets there. All right. Well, I think that is everything that I had planned to cover, and I think we have a couple other items we'll walk us through and end on some questions. So, Will, let me stop and hand it over to you. Might go blank for a second, just like Will said before.
Perfect. Well, that was amazing. All right, and then we'll go to our little slide deck here. Share her information, and then now we're ready for Q&A. So I can hand it back to Michelle.
Thanks, Will. So as a reminder, there's a question spot in the question pane to the right of your screen. So identify the name of your organization, and it gives the speaker insight into any special considerations that need to be addressed. There's also a questions you hadn't thought of example in your handouts portion. So we'll give it just a few minutes and see if anyone has any questions for the Soleran folks or for Travis. I'd also like to invite you all to consider joining us in San Antonio for the CIHQ Summit. It's just a couple of weeks away. The Soleran booth will be there with bells on. They always do a wonderful job. All right. Will you put your contact information up on the screen again? Thank you. There's Amanda's. Perfect. Okay. We're not getting any questions in the queue, so I think you might have covered them all or answered them in your handout. We'll leave this up until all the attendees have fallen off, and I welcome you to check out the recorded version. It'll be up on the CIHQ ARS YouTube channel, and Soleran will also have a copy for their library. Thanks, everyone. All right, we're going to close this down. Thanks, everyone.